Oliver, he, him. Perfect. How are you today?
I'll be honest, like, not great.
Yeah, I mean,
as
true.
you could imagine, yeah. So like, I'm a trans guy living in Missouri. Started transitioning like 3.5 years ago, and my girlfriend is also trans. We've been living together. Yesterday was like our 7-year anniversary.
Oh, wow. Congrats.
Yeah, thanks. And so like I'm pretty involved with a local organization, LGBT organization here called the Center Project. And as soon as I heard about the news, like you said, you were talking about being on Reddit a lot lately, and I'm on Reddit a lot. Like I think it's a pretty good place to get like a lot of like what's going on for trans people. I think it's a good way to stay informed, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like that's where I found out. That's where I heard about the AG rule on the 13th on Thursday when it happened. Like a couple hours after it happened, somebody posted it on one of the trans subreddits that I was following, and I was like, please tell me this person is misinterpreting what's happening and this isn't real. So like I brought up the PDF by myself and started reading it, and I'm like, oh god. So I like made a video through the like panic attack I was having practically, and like it was like I need to make sure everybody knows what's happening as soon as possible. I was seeing some articles coming out where, so like our attorney general, one of the things that he's of course doing is saying that it's about kids. I'm protecting children. That's what they're always saying.
Oh, yeah. Great excuse. I mean, you can do a lot of things when you weaponize the well-being of children. Exactly.
And so, like, even on his website where he has posted the emergency rule where it was published, it says, like, Missouri AG issues an emergency rule to protect children. And then, so, like, a lot of journalists are seeing the headline and they're not, like, looking at the details. And so, like, I saw articles coming out that were saying, oh, it's going to ban HRT for minors. And I'm like, this rule literally says that it affects, I mean, it doesn't specify that it affects minors. It's every trans person in Missouri. And for a lot of people were also getting confused because they were saying, they thought it was a bill. A lot of people are going, oh, like if this passes, this is going to be awful. It's not a bill. It's the attorney general issued a rule. He's not supposed to be able to do that. He's not supposed to be able to create legislation. That's not part of his job or his power. But he did it anyway. And doctors are complying anyway because they don't want to lose their license. They don't want to go to jail. And it takes effect this Thursday on the 27th. It's not a bill. It doesn't have an approval process. But also, sorry if I'm like spitting everything out really quickly. I'm like a little bit nervous.
No, you're cool. Yeah, it's totally fine. I mean, so I think part of the reason why there was a little bit of confusion on this is that there are two things happening at once in Missouri. Like literally like right before this news broke, I had a stream immediately before this news broke that was about like a hearing in Missouri on one of those bills. They're being filibustered right now, which I believe is why they took this emergency rule tactic, because like they currently are trying to push through legislation that is specifically targeting transgender minors. And then this is like what they're doing now when they end up in this situation where they can't get the legislation to pass. Same thing happened in Texas, literally the exact same thing. They tried to push the bill through. They couldn't push the bill through. It wasn't a filibuster in that case. It was just simply a lack of ability to get it. Oh my God, Void Kitty. Oh, so cute. What is Kitty's name?
His name is Sebastian.
Oh, Sebastian. My black cat is named Mitternacht, which is German for midnight. Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
He's a big fat boy. But yeah, so like, it's the same exact thing that happened in Texas where they're trying to pass the law and they can't pass the law. So they have to steal extra legislative power, basically, and like specifically subverting that process of elected representatives. Oh my God, the purring. You could really hear it for a second there.
He's a major lap cat. He's just really happy he's on my lap.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. My cat, he's way, way, way too fat to be a lap cat. Like he literally just can't be there or he will like fall off. And I can't make it, like he cannot lose weight apparently. He's been the same for 10 years. It doesn't matter how little we feed him. He just is like that. But he's adorable.
Cats are like that sometimes. Sometimes you just got to be a chunky guy.
They're just round. Sometimes they're just round.
I wanted to say the Secretary of State here in Missouri, he's actually the previous Attorney General. I think he was the Attorney General until January when the new guy came in. Mm-hmm. And he's gone. I've seen some journalists posting that he's saying this. We're not expecting this to stay. There's a possibility. Well, there's a hope that this is going to have an injunction.
Yeah, the ACLU will sue. I know that they're looking for a plaintiff right now. So I'm fingers crossed, trying to figure out, should I tell my brother to start rationing now, or should we wait until Thursday to see if it actually goes into effect or not? It's a really hard situation.
If he should reduce his dose, next time that he administers testosterone.
Yeah, basically what I'm thinking is that's going to be our first immediate step. He's on a pretty normal dose, and the dose that I'm considering having him shrink to is basically just the what I would be on low dose testosterone, as a non-binary person. He's kind of at that slightly higher level that, and his blood levels are fine and everything, but keep filling your prescription the way that it is written, but only take half of it so that we can make it last as long as possible. Which is just a really unfortunate thing to have to consider. And it hurts me deeply that he is having to deal with that kind of question, that our parents are supportive, but he is, inevitably having to deal with this very adult kind of pressure, and it's unfortunate that it is affecting the adults as well now, that everybody in Missouri has to go literally get an assessment for autism, or you're not allowed to be on your hormones anymore. And if you are confirmed to be autistic, you're not allowed to be on hormones anymore. That is just insane. It's absolutely crazy to me, and it's so deeply painful as a community that I'm I think that part of the thing that I found so insightful about your video on this was that focus on finding community and being with other trans people. I don't know how else we're going to survive this.
Yeah, that's the main thing that I'm trying to encourage people of right now. So I've been kind of realizing lately. So my therapist is a cis Black man, and he's really progressive and very informed about the stuff that trans people are going through. So honestly, I'd be a fucking mess right now if it wasn't for him, not gonna lie.
True.
But something that he and I have talked about is that trans people are and queer people in general are pretty uniquely disadvantaged compared to racial minorities or religious minorities, for example, because most of the time we're not inheriting our transness or our queerness from parents who are both also queer or trans. And usually a lot of the time we're going to have cis het parents, and they're not going, a lot of Black kids, not every Black kid is able to be in this position, but very often their parents will also be Black, or at least they'll have one parent who is Black, who can teach them hey, we live in a world that is very hostile toward us, and here are some ways that we can stay safe. Here's people who you could be born into a family who understands that what's happening to you is not only real, but they've lived through it, they've endured it, and they've had the opportunity to learn ways to keep themselves safe. And for trans people, it's my parents are homophobic and transphobic, and I haven't spoken to them in several years. So when it comes to community and found family, you really, if you have not found your found family, that is a project that you need to be working on immediately. And I know a lot of us have really bad social anxiety and shit, because also, by the way, I have trouble not saying bad words. I'm probably gonna say
no. We cuss a lot on this stream, no worries. Okay. I drop slurs on this stream, don't worry about it.
Oh god. It's just, so here's something that I learned in a book that my therapist recommended to me. I would recommend it to you guys as well. It's called I think it's called Liberation Through anger, love and rage. It's a Black queer Buddhist perspective on like liberation politics and like how to cope with all of the shit that's happening. And it's a really good book. But one of the things that he said, and I'll like link it in chat or something if I find it later, but one of the things that the author said is that we're all ancestors in training. Like if you're a minority, you're an ancestor in training. And lately I've been realizing like I wouldn't be who I am now if it wasn't for all of the trans and queer people who've been like, they paved the way before me. They lived lives even harder than what I'm living right now. Mm-hmm. And like I'm indebted to my community because they made me me, and I get to be me because of all of the work that they've done. And so like now it's my turn. And like it's really hard and it's scary, and like I've had a lot of social anxiety in my past as well, and it's difficult sometimes, but like it is really important to like reach out to your local LGBT organizations, even if they live far away from you. Like they'll very often have a website, they'll have a Facebook page. There are people who can help you, and like it will make a massive difference to your mental health, like just having that support and community. And plus it's not only like the social support, like emotionally benefiting you, like it will very much like materially benefit trans Missourians right now, especially because you know, I'm not going to be able to give you like ideas of, I don't want to say things that are illegal that'll get you TOS'd, but like if you are in a position where you're going to need to order your medicine, that going to an organization is where you can very much find people who know how to get stuff.
I mean, even if it's just, you know, people who are going to be able to give you a ride to Illinois where you're getting your illegal medicine, you know, and the binder exchanges and like being able to help each other with those kind of daily resources, you know. I'm sure that there are even going to be people who have issues fulfilling the requirements because of like housing insecurity. And so like getting to know your fellow trans people, like maybe you could end up in a roommate situation with those folks. And then you have people who you're living with who understand what you're going through. You're not going to deal with homophobia in your home. You'll have to deal with all of the other issues that traumatized queer people who live together experience. But that's part of why I live alone. I'm like, I could have a roommate and it would be easier, but no, I don't want to deal with anybody else's issues.
Yeah, I get that.
But like, it's going to be, increasingly difficult, I think, to navigate the situation. I will say, good news. We did talk about this a little bit in the DMs. They were trying to make like a list, a report your neighbors list of trans people. And we managed to force them to take it down because of all of the false submissions and the people running bots and everything. So that's not to say that they aren't still going to be collecting information about people, but it does mean that one avenue has been shut down.
It was like really heartening to like see people do that. And I was trying to think like, what can we learn from this? If people were able to do this, like activism and work-wise, what made people feel enabled and ready? And like so many people shared this on like Reddit, and it got like, I think probably national attention. Like I just know that a whole lot of people were like making bots, and like it does make me really happy because whenever like this news first came out, it felt like nobody knew or cared what was happening, and it was sort of like what I felt like was a fatigue thing. Like everybody is so overloaded. Like what was it, like 3 or 4 days ago in Florida, there was the bill passed, I think, that will remove trans kids from their parents, right?
I think it's moved forward in the process. I'm not sure if it's actually passed. I was looking at that before stream as one of my many news items that we need to go over this week. I'm like, I'm not sure exactly that it has become official yet, but they're trying, you know?
And that's like exactly like you said, like one of the many things that we need to go over on stream. There are so many so much bad news for trans people coming out every fucking day.
And it's a deluge, an onslaught.
I saw that Ty Turner uploaded a video like a couple days ago, and one of the things that he pointed out is that having like this sheer massive number of anti-trans legislation, and some of them like being unrealistic to pass, that like nobody wants them to pass, even if they're like outlandish and maybe unlikely to go anywhere. The purpose of that is that it sort of normalizes and sort of like shifts that goalpost where it's like, well, maybe in comparison of like banning all HRT for adults, and maybe like banning it for kids doesn't look that bad in comparison. And like, yeah, it does seem like that's part of the strategy there.
Yeah, like the whole process of pulling the Overton window is that they posit this outrageous thing, and we've been seeing this with abortion for our entire lifetimes. Like they say, oh, we want to make abortion completely illegal, so instead we are going to compromise and say, oh, it should only be illegal in the third trimester, and then they continue to edge it back and back and back until they get to the point where functionally a 6-week ban is a blanket ban, because nobody even knows that they're pregnant until they're technically 4 weeks pregnant. And like, I have my own bitchiness about the way that we measure pregnancy. I think it's stupid that you're measuring from your last period. And like, I guess it's like weird to try to calculate what day, like what day it happened. But I still think it's stupid. And it's harmful to women and everybody who can get pregnant, because you can't even detect a pregnancy on ultrasound in that first 6 weeks. So something like requiring an ultrasound can also put you past that place. Just as a side note, the mifepristone thing, I saw one of the Supreme Court justices who dissented from, they decided to say we're temporarily putting a stay on the we're not going to let you take mifepristone anymore. Like, we're going to let this go through the courts and we're going to allow it to be available. One of the dissenting justices was like, yeah, we shouldn't have made this decision because it's going to be cleared through in the appeals court quick enough that it's not going to make a difference. And I'm like, do you mean in enough time for someone's pregnancy to develop from the place where they can take an abortion pill to the place where they can't anymore? Like, are you fucking kidding me? It would be frustrating. The hypocrisy would be if it weren't for the fact that I understand that that's the point, is that they don't care about the principles of bodily autonomy. And when they pretend to care about bodily autonomy, such as with vaccinations and stuff, they're only weaponizing the fact that that is a liberal like value. Fascists don't care about free speech. They don't care about freedom of choice or bodily autonomy. They pretend to care about those things so that they can infiltrate the system. And that's what we're kind of dealing with the consequences of now that Roe v. Wade is completely taken away. Like, it just seems like the floodgates are open, and that attacks on all kinds of bodily autonomy are naturally going to flow from that,
Yo, it's so scary too, because like when I was 19, I was in an abusive relationship and I needed an abortion as a result of the stuff that was happening in that. And I think I kind of felt like, I don't know, it's just, I didn't know that like my bodily autonomy was going to be violated even more than like the restrictions on the access to abortion, because like that was already incredibly emotionally distressing to me, that knowing that my autonomy could be taken away from me like that, it's really scary. Like, it's one thing to talk about it, but like if it's not your body and you haven't like gone through it, it's a little bit different. And I think, as like a trans guy who has like reproductive dysphoria, who like always thought pregnancy was like the freakiest shit I've ever heard of in my life.
Yeah, it's disgusting to me.
Yeah, and it's been like that since I was little too. Like when my mom was pregnant with my little siblings, and I learned what it was, I was like, excuse me? But yeah, it's just, I guess I kind of thought that I would get through it. I'd get the reproductive like care that I needed, and I guess it's been 11 years since I had my abortion, and I'm still. It's really tiring. It's really tiring to think that, like, how long am I going to be fighting for my bodily autonomy? How bad is it going to get?
Yeah,
it's just scary.
It's a tragic like situation to be in, and like I've never needed access to abortion, but I cried like the morning when I woke up and Roe v. Wade was gone. I was like, and I had to explain to my cis male partner, I'm like, it's like I am fucked up right now. Like I feel fucked up. Like I have fewer rights this morning than I did when I went to bed last night, and it's like, I guess because we grew up, like you're 30, I'm like 29. We grew up in a place where like we started to see acceptance. You know, in the 90s, it was all like har trans people jokes. Gay acceptance is like kind of starting to come in a little bit. Gay marriage finally passes in 2008. You know, we would have been in like middle school or early high school at the time. And so like we go from this period of sort of relative non-controversy, or like you see the Westboro Baptist Church and everybody kind of agrees that that's crazy, and that those people are worthy of ridicule. And yeah, it started to seem like things are getting better. You know, we get access to medical care, and then like, we start to see the very first inklings of children's medical care for transition being like more normalized. And then like this violent backlash was not something I was prepared to deal with. Like I could never have guessed. But if you had been paying attention to the abortion thing this entire time and the eking of rights slowly away, like this is obviously where we've been heading, like with the court system, you know, Republican appointed people voting completely down party lines when it comes to like the judges. It's very clearly been heading this direction. I will say, I think that one of the interesting things about this website coming down, and like I think the thing that I am trying to do on my show a bit is like trying to make it funny. Like it's funny to post the entire script to the B movie. Yeah. You know, it's trolling, like people get to poke fun, and you're kind of taking the seriousness out of like, yes, it's a serious situation when the Proud Boys show up with a bunch of guns at a drag show at a library. Like that's a very scary deal, and it's important, and it's, you know, it's a violent threat against us. But also I'm gonna talk about how they're wearing piss yellow, and about how, oh, you're such a big man with your big fucking guns, like you're not actually gonna do anything. And then like when we see an example of someone like in New York City, there was one where this guy got like bloodied, his nose was like bloodied, and he's like walking away like, I came here to help people, not to get beat the fuck up. And it's like, get get out of here, bitch. Like I think that that's part of what we need to do to motivate people. Like empower them by disempowering the fascism. Like your enemy is weak, right?
We're like advertising our political goals by like making it memes and making it fun, which like sometimes it feels a little bit frustrating to me, because I'm just like, man, this is so serious. This is a life or death situation for me and my girlfriend. And like sometimes I don't want to joke about it. But like on the other hand, it's like, you know, sometimes just like making jokes about it can be a little bit of relief. Like the other day we were in St. Louis, I had to drive a friend to the airport, and my girlfriend was like, I'm crying at work because of all the shit with the attorney general. Like, can I just take off work and come with you, and like we'll go do fun shit? And I'm like, yeah. And you know, like I had one of my friends come drive over too, and I was like, hey, you have to come hang out with us, because like getting genocided is really stressful.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, yeah, like making stuff fun, I think. Like people had creativity whenever they were filling out these false reports on this form, and it feels naughty, but it also feels safe because you're like doing it at home, and people are able to instruct each other to like use VPNs and things like that. So like I think this should be like a learning opportunity for us. You know, we should try to figure out like what made this work, and can we do it again?
Yeah. Absolutely. And like, can we expand beyond this? You know, we've demonstrated that we are able to succeed in this way. And it's going to be interesting to see when, you know, other stuff starts to happen. Like some senator's home was vandalized over this weekend. And if we like showing up at people's houses, or I don't know, throwing red paint on stuff, like I don't know what it is exactly, like what it's going to take exactly. But I think that this is a great brainstorming opportunity. Like definitely folks should take a look at this and try to figure out what it is about this that is incentivizing to people. You know, if it is it showing up in person, that's the big difference. Like, so how can we motivate that online presence then to do more and more and more stuff? Like, do we need to direct them toward faxing things to people's offices and like wasting all of their printer paper potentially? Like that's another sort of safe at home thing. A little civil disobedience, a little trolling, a little joking.
Yeah, and it can be like a little bit difficult to figure out like where the line is with like what is safe and what might not be safe. Like that's one thing that's difficult too with like I'm very radicalized, and I think like showing up to somebody's house is based and awesome, but
I mean, it's an American tradition. We used to disassemble people's houses board by board if we didn't like what they were doing. American tradition.
But I've, you know, one of the first things I wanted to do whenever I heard about this was like, I want to find Andrew Bailey's address and I want to go to his house. Like, I want to go to his house right now. And like, I've had people like talking me out of it. And
you can't go alone is the thing. You need to show up with 50 people. Mm-hmm. And how are you sure that one of those people isn't a fucking plant, you know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's part of the problem, too.
And yeah, Adria in my chat says finding things that won't backfire. Like, you know, things that aren't going to optically make you look worse in a situation where we are still kind of hoping to convince people that the risk is real, you know, and it's I think kind of hard, and they put us in a situation where it's kind of hard to retaliate without being portrayed as the aggressors. And like they do this to Black people, they do this to all kinds of minority groups where they break decorum, like with what's going on with Representative Zephyr in Montana. Like they you are breaking decorum by attacking our rights, and then when we like meet your brutality with words that are accurate to describe the situation, then we are accused of breaking decorum, which is it's hard to figure out what to do in that situation where as marginalized people and like trans women especially deal with this pressure to be perfect and like not be too angry, and you know you have to say your words just exactly correctly right, and like even then you have to hedge and try to be nice about the way that you're phrasing, like this will put children at risk for suicide is like a more polite thing to say than there's blood on your hands, like, you know, and like, but the more emotionally evocative and accurate you are, the more likely you are to be censured. And like, yeah, more risky, the more fascist it gets. Like the risk is only going to increase from this point. So for me, I think part of it is I wish that we could radicalize more cis people, because you're like, whether you might be doing the same activity that some cis person is doing, but there's more risk for you and I, because like we are part of that, like that minority group that's easier to like silence and attack and like remove rights from. And I personally feel a little frustrated about this as a content creator. I know like your channel is like a little bit smaller, but like it's like, I think that we are all limited somehow on like the maximum number of subscribers that it's even possible for a trans focused channel to get, because I feel like people are just only caring if they are clued in to this community, and that like it's really hard to break out into more of a mainstream audience.
Yeah, and it can be a little bit difficult, I think, also with like the level of patience that, like, for me personally, I'm not interested in trying to de-radicalize transphobic people. I'm not interested in trying to convince people who are like actively hateful toward me, or like I'm more focused on people who are already on the same page as me, and like I think it's more effective with like my time and my energy to like find a way to get people who already give a shit and have an idea of what's going on to like direct them to resources and action. I think that's like more effective. But at the same time, like I know that there is definitely a place for and a need for people who are doing that like de-radicalizing kind of work. But like when it comes to like reach as well, it's just really difficult to get like the right kind of messages out to like the people who need them. There's a frustration of sometimes the algorithm just being like, oh, you're making resources for trans people? I'm going to show them only to transphobes who are going to like, you're going to get like buckets of slurs directed at you. And I'm like, no, please, I just want to help trans people. Like, help me out here a little bit.
I have like the opposite problem right now because YouTube incentivizes content that your subscribers enjoy. So if my subscribers are trans and they're tired of hearing about the trans genocide, then my video doesn't break out into the mainstream audience that I'm trying to get it to, which is fucking annoying.
Yeah.
So my channel's struggling a little bit in that regard. But it's, and like the fact that our cries for help are being suppressed in an algorithm, like I can't post on Facebook about this at all because 0 people see it because the Facebook algorithm is based on what people want to interact with. Like it's no longer a place where my friends see my posts. It's a place where only people who have recently typed in that keyword are going to see the content that I'm talking about. So like, okay, I post about trans genocide and again, only my trans friends see it. Even if I'm trying to appeal to like my local community, and I'm like, oh, there's this thing happening in Kansas. Can y'all please contact your representatives? Like still, that's being limited because all of our political advocacy is throttled on social media websites that are built for algorithms.
Yeah, I've noticed that like with Facebook especially, that I think the algorithm is like very I don't know, seems to be programmed to like dampen some of our advocacy, seems like, and that like freaks me out. Like I can't like 100% verify that that's the case, but I've had so many situations where like, like I'm a pretty locally minded person, especially the last like few months, and like my local organization or somebody nearby will be doing like, hey, we're going to go to the Capitol and we're going to be like doing a demonstration, and then it'll be like recommended to me 3 days after or like a week after it was posted, and I'm like, are you just like taunting me with the fact that you did not show me this when it was relevant? Like you didn't show me this shit like until after it was over? Because it just happens like very frequently. This is Jack, by the way. We have another cat.
Oh my god, what a cutie. I was like, incoming. He coming. Cutie.
But something that I wanted to bring up about the AG's emergency rule that I haven't talked about here yet is that I have some mental health diagnoses. I'm on SSDI, and so like it's like legally recorded that like I have mental health diagnoses, PTSD and depression, and I on this bill, on the emergency bill, it states something like any mental health comorbidities should be resolved before a patient can be prescribed HRT or like given any kind of like trans affirming like transition care. And so I've reached out to my hospital system's chief compliance officer. That's the first person who I emailed whenever I learned about this. So that's like a good title to know if you're like trying to go up the lines if you need to talk to somebody in your medical provider system. But so I've been asking him like, hey, am I going to be able to have access to my goddamn medicine? Like, am I gonna still have my testosterone even though I have mental health diagnoses? And he's like, we are trying our best to make sure, like one of those a little bit bland, but like I know that I live in a progressive area and the hospital system is fairly progressive, and I do feel like my my providers are going to try to continue coverage, but my doctor said that she doesn't really have clear answers yet.
Yeah, so, I mean, lawyers are going to need to get involved, and like people who are used to reading medical law to be able to interpret this so that we know how to appropriately move forward. And I've seen some of the cases where patients are being dropped in Missouri. It's because the doctor's office, like the clinic, doesn't possess the legal resources to defend their license.
Yes.
And like that's one of the major things. Like this is one of those like stifling effects that people don't necessarily realize, is that they don't even have to directly say you're not allowed to provide this care. They just have to increase the threat of litigation and investigation, and then like in order to comply, some doctors will just stop providing the care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a screenshot that I could read out loud from a trans person in Missouri whose doctor dropped them. I've read it on my channel as well, but it's basically just I don't have the resources to defend my license to continue practicing gender affirming care should the state investigate me under the new emergency rule. In the meantime, I recommend requesting a 90-day supply of your medications, and if this rule is overturned, I will reinstate your plan of care immediately. So that's like the highlights of the letter that they sent out to their trans patients one day after the rule was issued. So it's really scary.
Yeah, you're supposed to be grandfathered in so long as you begin the process of obtaining all of this therapy you're supposed to get and all this junk. But like realistically, like is your clinic able to withstand the potential investigation? I'm surprised, frankly, that this injunction hasn't already occurred. Although I think some people in my chat were suggesting that it might be like a last minute thing on Wednesday. Just because of how the court system works. I'm not entirely sure why their justification was for that, because it was a few days ago that we were talking about this. But the drama, right? Like, are we seriously going to have an 11th hour injunction on Wednesday night when this rule is supposed to go into effect on Thursday? Like, I'm going to have a fucking heart attack. Like, I'm about to pop a pulmonary embolism right now. The stress is so real. But like, yeah, the question of like resolved mental illness is a like major depression, like major depressive disorder is supposed to be like a thing that you just have, like diagnosis wise. It's not like PTSD, which you can effectively like reduce your symptoms so much that you don't qualify as having it anymore. Like I went through therapy for that last year and then it came back. Yay. I had about 2 months free of those symptoms, and then now the jumpiness is fully back. It's great.
I really hope that doesn't happen to me, because like my PTSD symptoms have gotten a lot better over like the last couple months. Like I'd be so devastated if they came back.
I mean, I did a targeted prolonged exposure thing for a couple months, which made my symptoms temporarily worse, and it was quite difficult. And then several horrendous things happened in a short period of time, and including my IUD insertion, which was the most horrible thing that has ever happened to me. So, I finally got it out though. And there was an immediate palpable relief. And like, I've never experienced period cramps as like an ecstatic relief, but they just are so much more normal now. Like my 10 for pain was recalibrated after having the IUD put in. So yeah, that gave me the PTSD. It's like way more concentrated than it used to be. But I'm in therapy with the same person who I did my prolonged exposure with. So hypothetically, they resolve by themselves with like the amount of treatment that you're getting. If you're in like a place where you can process your emotions. So hopefully, but like, what do you do if you have major depressive disorder or like panic disorder, which are supposed to be intrinsic things that can't be cured, or autism? Like, what are you supposed to do? Question. The answer is nothing. The answer is not have medical care, because that's the point, is to try to make it as close to a blanket ban as possible without it being a literal blanket ban.
And Aaron Reed said, many transgender people suffer from depression or anxiety before transitioning, and gender-affirming care is the most effective treatment. Banning gender-affirming care for people experiencing this until it is resolved is like banning insulin until somebody's diabetes resolves. Like, and that's just literally true.
Yeah, it's crazy. And like dysphoria often can cause these other things, and then like they resolve once you receive gender affirming care. But yeah, and if you have for like an eating disorder, like I don't have one, but I know that it's very common among trans men, like having a restrictive eating disorder, and those tend to manifest in trans people because we don't have control over our bodies. Like if we lose weight, then our curves are less prominent for trans men. Like, and they just want to force you to do a specific, the kind of rehab that you can do for eating disorders, and then like you come out of it and you're still fucking trans. So like it's not like the cause of your issue has been resolved. It's just been demonstrated repeatedly that this is the most like effective type of care. It's shocking to me. Do you see a lot of this conversation happening lately about like trans people just need therapy, basically? Like as though we didn't already go through this as like a medical community society scientifically. We tried to treat people with just therapy and then it fucking didn't work. Very clearly.
I definitely see that pop up now and then.
It's wild to me.
Like we have the data. That's the thing that's really frustrating is we have the data. We know what works. We know what doesn't work. And people are just lying or denying it. And like, whenever I realize like somebody is just kind of like denying reality, then it's like, just don't want to talk to you. I don't know why we continue to engage, like focus our engagement towards those people. And I'm not saying that it's like wrong to do that. I think that like it definitely has a place and it probably is helpful. But it's just like, that's not work that I'm capable of doing. It's so incredibly frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, respect to people like Vosh who do those debates, and like, it's not even about convincing that person necessarily so much as it is about like convincing people on the sidelines who are like listening in and who might not be sure, or the point is to give people better arguments to use. I mean, truly, I think Natalie Wynn may have even said it recently that the point of debate isn't to convince anyone, it's to make your opponent look foolish. So maybe that's a tack that we should aim for more, which is not to like try to justify our position, but rather to kind of force the opposition into a position where they have to defend themselves, and like trying to like, undercut that power by ridiculing them. The question of what do you do when you're debating Matt Walsh and he says, what is a woman? Like, well, you should turn it on him and say, well, your definition is an adult human female. So can you please define for me what is an adult, what is a human, and what is a female? Because they are making a claim and they should be made to defend it, and they are just going to constantly try to put us on the defensive. And we need to like, I think it's a traumatized response that we have a tendency to reflexively be defensive. So when someone says trans people are pedophiles and groomers, then we go, no, we're not. In fact, many trans people have been victims of child sexual abuse and da-da-da-da-da-da. It's like, no, that's the wrong thing to do. I think that's, like, I think that's like you're in an abusive relationship. That's also like a reflex that we have, is to be defensive. And when we're being attacked about something that's absolutely fucking untrue, we have this impulse to be like, well, no, I didn't do that. And like, I wasn't trying to make you look bad in front of your friends. And like, it's just about trying to put you in that position where you have to defend yourself. And so you're unable to get past and like realize that what's actually happening is you're being attacked. Like the reason why you feel defensive is because you are being attacked. And those dynamics, it's so interesting to see how those kind of interpersonal dynamics, looking at the abusive relationship, can be like expanded upon. And like, that's literally, we're in a countrywide abusive relationship with the Republican Party.
Yeah, it is like absolutely reflected, I think, in like interpersonal, like you said, it's interesting to see how like people's politics change the way that they interact with the world in general and the way they interact with other people. Because I've kind of noticed definitely a little bit of a pattern where like every abuser I've had in my life has been right wing.
Interesting. Yeah, weird.
It's like the authoritarianism, I guess, like they're left-wing people. Since I've like, like I grew up Catholic and my parents were abusive and all that kind of stuff. And like hierarchy was like important to them, you know, it was something that they definitely like believed in. And since I've gotten older and I've found like my found family and found people who are left wing. Like I realized like a lot of people are not like that. They don't keep hierarchy like that and like authority in their interpersonal relationships, and it's like so freeing actually. Like it's such a huge relief to have a lot of people in my life like that. And especially because like growing up, like I just thought like everybody was like my parents, everybody was like the people that I grew up with, because like that's all I knew. I grew up in a conservative area, so it's been a journey for sure.
Yeah, the world that you're exposed to when you're young is not the only world that exists. And I think that for some people it's just a matter of exposure, like being exposed to the new ideas. So of course there's going to be people who are deliberately homeschooling their kids to believe in Jesus and not know what LGBTQ means and not know what Black Lives Matter is. And then those people are going to enter the world at some point and they're going to say some dumb shit. And to some it's someone's job out there. It's not everybody has to be responsible for deconverting people from being morons, but like it's someone's job out there to explain to them nicely. And at the same time, it's someone's job out there to tell them that they're being a fucking idiot. And I think that both of those things are important in the process of deconversion.
You're describing like my the last 10 years of my life, by the way. It's just
no.
No, it's okay. It's just like after I started getting out of all of this, like I guess I slowly started realizing that my parents taught me really fucked up shit, and it's taken a lot of like purposeful like educating myself over the last few years to like get out of all of that.
Yeah, and you have to make a deliberate effort. It's easy, I think, to go, oh, well, you're just, if you're so angry, like, I don't want to listen to you, like, you're counteracting what I was raised, and the people who raised me to believe that were nice, so, or whatever, like, your church maybe was, like, reinforcing, when you leave the church and you go tell people about the gospel and they get annoyed with you, and so you come back to the church and they're all like, oh, poor baby, the outsiders were so mean to you, and it, like, reinforces that, yeah. It's hard to break out of what we were taught when we were younger, which is why that's why that they're against abortion, and like that's why they're against birth control, is because they want to make more Amish babies or whatever.
Yeah, and something else I think with the restriction on reproductive access that a lot of people don't seem to notice or talk about a whole lot is that, there is that factor of like, let's make more Catholic babies to like overwhelm like the culture. But there's also, I think it's a very deliberate move against working class people in general. It's very frustrating to me when people make it out to be like a men versus women thing, because like, first of all, trans men are men and need access to abortion. But like a lot of cis men are like very, very pro-choice. Like if we look at like the stats of like what demographics are pro-choice and anti-choice, it's not that the numbers between men and women are especially significantly different, because they're only like 10 points different actually. But when it's like between Democrat and Republican and like religious and non-religious, that's where like the difference is more obvious. But also I'm like kind of getting a little bit distracted, and I want to make sure we're talking more about the AG stuff. I just realized.
No, it's cool. I mean, I think it's good to have conversations with trans people that kind of allow us to sort of meander a little bit and like talk about the multifaceted ways in which we're affected, because as trans masculine people, like we are affected by both of those things simultaneously, like the abortion restrictions and restrictions on bodily autonomy with trans issues. But so something I was interested in asking you about, if you're comfortable talking about it at all, is like, are you and your girlfriend like considering leaving the state? Like,
oh yeah, we are. So like, here's the thing, like there could be an injunction placed on this rule. It could get paused, it could get removed. And even if it does, hopefully it does. But even if it does, I think that this is a very clear sign that it is not safe here. If you are living in Missouri and you are trans, even if you are completely broke and it's not realistic for you to move, I think making plans to leave is a very important step. Because I don't have a lot of money or resources, but I'm going to start working again. I'm going to see vocational rehabilitation next Friday. But it's Minnesota. Me and my girlfriend are dedicated to moving to Minnesota now. Even if we are able to maintain access to our medication, if the AG can make a rule overnight, like in one day, he says, I need doctors to do this, even though he can't. He's not supposed to be able to legislate. He's not supposed to be able to do that. But instead of our doctors saying, you can't do that, I'm not listening to you, our doctors are saying, I'm scared and I'm going to do what you say. So I know a lot of people are going to think like, oh, this is dramatic. Nothing like this would never happen. But if the AG decided, I would like to make an emergency rule where all trans people, anybody diagnosed with gender dysphoria, needs to be involuntarily hospitalized and subjected to conversion therapy. Like, if he said that, I think doctors and police in Missouri would just say, okay. All right. So, that's the thing that I'm, really scared of is, apparently he could just do that and our doctors would just... everybody would let it happen. Nobody is going to save us. It has been 10 or 11 days since that rule was issued, and there hasn't been an injunction placed on it. And I think with the ACLU and Lambda Legal having their eyes on it is, I think that they aren't going to be able to open up a case until after Thursday, the 27th. When somebody is actually materially rejected their medication, I think that's kind of what I'm predicting, but I don't know for certain. But
I mean, our whole legal system is very reactive. Harm has to be done and then you can sue. Company poisons a bunch of people and then when they get cancer, they sue. Oh no, the clause.
Yeah. Just climbing up my lap like a tree. They do this all the time.
That's the other reason why Mitternacht isn't really allowed in my lap, is because in order to stabilize, he must dig in. And it's no, I can't deal with this. Oh, baby. I've been suggesting to people for a long time, get out of these states where these things are happening. They are not going to stop trying. Whether this AG rule gets put on hold or not, they're going to... maybe they'll do what they did in Florida and stack the Board of Medicine so that the Board of Medicine just declares that gender affirming care isn't the correct medical approach, basically. They can try all these different methods outside, using their executive discretion, and it's, or they're going to try to push through the legislation and maybe it'll get filibustered for a while, but then it will inevitably pass. Or maybe they decide to silence a Democratic senator by censuring them and not allow and expelling them from the House like they did in Tennessee. They're going to keep doing it. It's not going to stop. I think if you live in a state where these things are trying to be pushed, then you need to be considering getting out. The sanctuary state law in Minnesota, thank God we have some of those places starting to come up, and you'll be relatively close to Canada if they start passing federal laws. I do think we need to start being on the lookout for federal legislation.
That was one of the reasons why we were thinking Minnesota made sense for us. Because we were like, oh, we could go to Illinois. My sister is there and one of my best friends is in Illinois. But, my girlfriend pointed out, if shit goes down and we need to get the fuck out, really quick, if we're in Minnesota and we have our passports, then we can get out. And I know a few people who live in Canada, and it's if we needed a place to stay for a little while, man, like I said in my video, I don't want to be a political refugee, but
that's the situation. Nobody wants that. Nobody is sitting here saying what I really want to do is have to sell all of my belongings to afford one single plane ticket so that I can be in a place where I'm going to be couch surfing for several months on all my queer friends' couches. Nobody wants to be in this situation. And when people tell me, oh, it's so privileged of you to just tell people to move, I'm not saying just move. I'm saying sell everything you own, go with the clothes on your back and a backpack with your toothbrush in it, and become a political refugee. That's not a privileged thing to do. When people from Mexico cross the border into the United States and risk their children dying on the trail to get here. Like, that's not a fucking game. And I don't think people recognize, like, I'm being dead serious. And these are real considerations that we're having to make for the safety of our families and our own safety. Like, the realistic probability that things are going to continue accelerating this way. Like, the reason why I brought up the national thing anyway is because we are seeing the attempt to pass the, like, trans women in sports thing. And that's where it always starts. It starts with, oh, of course, it's a reasonable concern, the sports access thing. And then that just immediately snowballs into care bans and things like this. And the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene hasn't been fired yet.
Oh my gosh, I saw that clip of her yesterday where she was calling Dylan Mulvaney like what the biggest pedophile in the United States.
Yeah,
I'm like, don't think he could say that actually.
You know, I would assume that would be some kind of slander, but yeah, it remains to be. I feel like Dylan could afford the fees for a lawyer on that.
I would love to see that happen.
It would be great. I mostly would like to see Marjorie Taylor Greene in jail. Like, that's what I would like to see more than anything else because of her insurrection thing. But, like, why? How is she still an elected? Anyway, that's kind of besides the point. I mean, it's fascism. Every single time when I go, why is this happening? The answer is fascism, and I would be a lot less confused if I just accepted that all of this is inevitably leading toward, like, I don't even know. Do they care about trans people? Like, you've been kind of watching this as well as I have. Does it seem to you like these Republicans even really care about trans people, or does it seem like we are just the scapegoat group for them to take power away from democracy?
You know, I think most of them actually don't give a shit.
Yeah, like, I don't think that any of them are real Christians either. Like, I don't even think that they believe most of the things that they say. Like, it just seems like everything that they do is an excuse, and it's very 1984. Like, the power is the point. Like there almost isn't any purpose to anything that they do aside from consolidating further power.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's accurate, actually, from like everything that I've seen, because like one of the reasons why like I'm a little bit disinterested, like I said, in like trying to say, hey, here's some sources, let me convince you that like what this does is save people's lives and make them happy and make them like productive members of society, and like one of the reasons why I'm not really interested in that is because there are already motherfuckers with PhDs attending like testimonies.
PTSD for a PhD, though. It's probably not uncommon.
It kind of sounds like, yeah. But like doctors, medical professionals who have been like studying medicine for many years, they're appearing in front of legislators and they're saying, hey, we know the data. Here is our data. It says that this is what people need and that it is good for everyone, actually. So let's not pass these laws. Let's not harm people. Let's not kill children. Let's not do that because we know that that's what's going to happen. And like, if they're not going to listen to a cis doctor with a PhD, like, they're not going to fucking listen to me. So like, why? Why would I try to tell them my story and like try to, like, it just stresses me out and it feels so fruitless, you know? But yet they don't care, and they have been told, they do know that this is going to hurt and kill kids. It's going to hurt and kill people to have their medication, their access to transition taken away from them, and they just don't really give a shit. I do think that some of them, you know, they might not be like super opposed to trans people. They might not think that trans people are like an actual threat, but they might think, well, I do think they're a little bit gross to look at, and I don't really like thinking about people having genitals that I don't really expect, or like maybe if I'm like on Pornhub for like a few minutes, like I can tolerate, but when it comes to like actually having trans people, like if I have to make the decision between maintaining power and hurting people, like they've got their priorities in where they want them to be.
Yeah. And I mean, some people in my chat, and I don't necessarily disagree with this on principle, is like the fact that we are going to be hurt and die is like maybe even the desirable result that they're going for. Like, and that's like a hard thing to convince normies of, that like, yeah, they know that this is going to result in more suicides and that's what they want. Like, they're not doing it in spite of the fact that this is going to hurt people. They're doing it because it will hurt people. I think your plan is a pretty smart one. Like, yeah, as someone in my YouTube chat says, relocating from Missouri to Minnesota and then to Canada is based political incrementalism. It's the only political incrementalism I will accept. I'm thinking like Seattle, because I know a lot of queer people who live there, and that seems like
expensive. The West Coast is so expensive.
Oh no, I know. I'm fully aware of how expensive it is. Yeah, and like my income isn't going to scale when I move because I'm self-employed as a streamer, but it's so close to like Vancouver, and like trans people who I know in Seattle are like, they're the kind of like militant, like willing to defend ourselves kind of people. And like, I just don't know if there are as many of those type of folks in Minnesota. And like, also Minnesota is not near Vancouver, and like British Columbia has good trans healthcare. So that's sort of like, it's going to be expensive to live there, but I know people who live there, you know? So that seems like, you know, either way, going from Minnesota or from Washington into Canada, like that just, to me, it feels like the only viable option. Like, if I talk to my partner about this, like, and he's not on board with going, then like I'm probably just gonna have to go anyway, because it's not like, I don't think that I'm willing to put my life at risk in that way. I have that keen sense that it's going to become very dangerous, and like, even if we're not looking at the legislative thing, this is the other aspect of fascism that I don't think people acknowledge as much, is the stochastic terrorism aspect, that I'm afraid of being clocked in public because I might just be randomly shot. It doesn't even have to be the legislative process putting me in a camp. It could just be the citizen militia, basically, you know, little bit of the Sturman, whatever the fuck it was called. It was not exactly the SS, but there was a citizens one in Nazi Germany that was comprised of like students. Yeah. Do you have any of those issues, like with like the sense of danger of being in public? I don't know how it is in like your part of Missouri. I live in a pretty like fairly progressive part of Kansas. Like, there's a few blue splotches around in Kansas, and even then, like, even still, I am freaked out about being in public.
I'm in a pretty progressive area. Like, it's a college town, and it's actually pretty nice. Like, we have our own LGBT organization here, so like that's huge. It's awesome. And like, we've had, I think in our city, we had conversion therapy banned. Like, we've had like a lot of like good local activism type of stuff, and like a lot of good support here. But despite that, we're kind of like an oasis in a sea of red. And so of course there's a lot of people who like come up here to like get their access to the local Walmart or whatever. And like, while I don't experience like a lot of like harassment or like microaggressions and things like that, my girlfriend does.
For sure.
Because she is well, I mean, there's like that focus, that hypervisibility on trans feminine people, and she's also not like super passing. So like, if somebody clocks her, like, we've had multiple times where like we'll be walking together in public, we'll be at a park or something, and like a stranger will like start saying shit to her. They'll like, and like, it never starts with me. They don't do it to me, and I feel fairly safe walking around. Like, I have this hat that says gay instead of Gap, and like I'll wear that around. But like, if I'm like at a certain gas station outside of town, like I'll be like, all right, can I
just leave that in the back seat,
so I don't get hate crimed. Like, there are some areas where like I don't feel safe for sure, where I'm like a little bit more cautious. But when it comes to like harassment and stuff actually happening. Like my girlfriend has dealt with like a lot of shit here. Like,
Yeah.
Strangers saying like, what are you? Or like laughing at her or like taking pictures of her. And like she doesn't really like to leave the house very much because of it. And it really sucks.
That's really scary.
Yeah, it is really scary.
And like, how free are we? If I feel like I can't put a trans sticker on my car because I'm worried about my car getting trashed, like if I'm not able to go to the gay club and dance because people have been like shot dead while dancing at a club, like how free are we really? Not very. It kind of feels like even outside of the legislative, if it becomes strictly illegal in Tennessee for you to exit the house when you're cross-dressing, that's one thing. But then like the actual just threat of interpersonal violence in this country is crazy. So I think that we should all be making our exit plans and taking this very seriously. If I don't know if you're familiar at all with any of these networks that are kind of starting to come up that are supportive refugee network type things, like one of my friends is involved in one called, it's like rainbowpassage.org. Their website is up.
I've heard of like Rainbow Railroad.
I've heard of Rainbow Railroad as well. Yeah. Rainbow Passage
like
just
people
relocated their
outside of the
first
US,
person. Like I think they pulled them out of Florida living with unsupportive parents and put them, and they're like, they have a roommate situation in a supportive area. So yeah, if like anybody who needs to reach out, if you need to reach out, like you're on SSDI, obviously that doesn't leave you with very many resources. So if you do end up needing help, if you and your girlfriend need like any like assistance, you might be able to get in touch with rainbowpassage.org. Or if you wanted to, I'm going to try to get in touch with the organizer that I know to try to like see what capacity to which I can contribute to that. I can't really donate, but is just each time they need to fundraise for a new person to relocate, I can help signal boost them. It's rainbowpassage.org though. Like, let me make sure that that's the correct link.
There are some resources that I wanted to share with you here as well, for people in Missouri. I got a newsletter email from, I don't know, it was like some St. Louis like LGBT org, I think. And like it seems like from what I've been told, like St. Louis right now has been like very, very active and leading, like helping people get to resources and stuff. I'm gonna send you a link on Discord. It has like a really big list. So like whatever way you think is gonna be like most appropriate to share that with people. And some of the stuff on here, one thing that I want people to be aware of is that Illinois, like I contacted Planned Parenthood of Illinois and they told me that they can take patients from Missouri. And so like that,
like you don't have to live there in order to receive care.
And technically they have a policy, like I think it's actually a state law, or maybe it's like some kind of like a national policy or something. But like if you're doing telehealth, then they say, oh, you're supposed to be inside of the state. You have to go over the border into the state to do telehealth appointments. Like you can't be in your state and do, and it's like, realistically, are they going to be able to verify that you're not in the state? If you don't have access to a vehicle, like a lot of the time they aren't really going to know, and they aren't like, they want to help their patients. So if they can just pretend that their patient is in Illinois, a lot of the time they're probably going to do that for you realistically.
Yeah. It depends on your doctor for sure, but there are going to be ones who are willing to help. And it's kind of like when I first was getting transition care, there were like lists online of which ones were informed consent, like which ones weren't going to make you go through the whole rigmarole of psychoanalyzing and shit like that. Like there are going to be more and more resources like that as well, where queer networks will be like, yes, this is the clinic that I'm going to. They don't really scrutinize too hard your address situation, like, so again, and yeah, using a VPN, of course, when you're accessing these websites and stuff is going to be.
Something that I wanted to mention for like safety is, I think, especially if you're like a trans person of color driving if you get needles prescribed in Illinois and you're like driving back to Missouri, like you do not want a cop to see needles and a vial in your car.
I would recommend ordering online in that case. Yeah.
If you can. Yeah, if that's something that you can do, or like
a local pharmacy, like, because you can go to Walgreens and just get your supplies without a prescription. I've done that before, at least in Kansas. So yeah, that's another one I would recommend.
Yeah, you can just straight up order your needles from Amazon. Like the needles that I inject my girlfriend's estrogen with, they were from Amazon and they have been fine. So like that's a potential option, but it's just like, I don't know if you've read the article that I mentioned in my video that I uploaded a little while ago about the two-spirit person who had a legal prescription to testosterone, and they had needles and tea in their car, and yeah, they got treated very, very badly by the police. And like, you know, I just don't want something like that to happen to people. So if you can avoid having some stuff in your car, like that might be helpful, because like you're already going to be there's a potential that we could be subjected to more scrutiny and brutality and all that, just being trans. But
yeah, random searches. And like Black people obviously are already intimately familiar with that experience. Like they already don't do things like not use their turn signal, you know, like and I think that that's like, I guess, part of the adjustment for white trans people is having to recognize that our mere existence is going to start being policed in that same way. Merely existing in public in a way that is like appears to be transgender. Like part of the reason that I'm worried is because I'm a lot more femme presenting than I used to be, like earlier in my transition. So I changed my ID to say male when Trump was in office, and now I don't bother to bind in public as much anymore, which means that I'm more likely to be perceived as trans feminine. I'm not excited about that.
Ask you, like, have people thought that you were a trans woman before and like harassed you for that?
Not really in public. I really don't deal with very much difficulty in public. I think that people sometimes stare at me, but I also like wear an N95 mask everywhere. So it's like kind of just whichever way I pitch my voice is sort of the determining factor. Yeah, so I don't personally experience a lot of that, but if I were to be in a situation where my ID is being looked at, then I could potentially be like facing violence. And so I try to do everything I can to not get pulled over. Like you want to reduce the number of police interactions you have to 0, if at all possible. As a white person, that's relatively easy. And then as far as, you know, it's just drive the limit and don't do stupid shit. Use your turn signal. Pretty much act like any moment something could go dramatically wrong, because frankly, all of us are just one bad police interaction away from being permanently disabled or dead. And that's you never know what cop you're gonna get. You never know how they're gonna treat you. If you can passably seem like an innocent little white girl, maybe that'll help you. If you can seem like a good old boy country man trans boy, like sometimes that works. Kind of depends on the moment. But
yeah, like it was the day after the shooting in Nashville. I was driving and a police officer was in front of me, and I had just finished reading like conservative Twitter talking about how women taking testosterone, it makes their brains fried and it makes them dangerous and they'll fucking kill you. Like they're dangerous. And I'm like, oh my God, if a cop realizes that I'm trans, like the day after this has happened, like, am I gonna be safe? And I just had I had a really bad time. And it was a little bit lucky because I was driving to therapy and my therapist helped me calm down from that.
Listen, that breakdown could not have had better timing.
Yeah, exactly. And I've also been like really grateful for my therapist too, because like as a Black man, like he's been able to like help me navigate like minority stress and like you said, like for white trans people, this is an adjustment for me because like when I was like, I don't know, 13, I realized I was like pansexual, but like I was very often in like straight passing relationships and didn't necessarily look queer, but even if I did, it's like if I looked like a queer cis woman before I started transitioning, then like it didn't really raise a lot of eyebrows or like put me in a whole lot of danger. Not saying that it doesn't happen, because it does, but like my proximity to privilege was much more secure before I started transitioning, and after I started transitioning, like last few years, it has been like a really big adjustment to realize like how unsafe I am sometimes, and like it's kind of a lot to handle. Like sometimes it's like a grieving of like the safety that I used to have, because there's been times where like I go on road trips and I'll be driving through an area that to my eyes just straight up look like a sundown town type of area.
Yeah.
You know? Like, and I'm like, I wish I would have taken the long way on the big highways, because like if I stop and go to the bathroom right now, like is somebody gonna like tell me I'm not supposed to be in there? And like the last few months I've started passing a lot better, but I do like, surprisingly, despite having like a mustache and everything, like I'm 5'2" with a giant ass, and so like a lot of the time like I'll still get misgendered, like and then people see my face and then they kind of look like they have this expression like, oh, oops, I'm confused.
Yeah, my cis male
like,
partner has long hair, so he used to have that sort of similar thing where people would see him from behind and be like talking to him like he's a woman, and he just turns around and there's a beard, you know, like just a full face beard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like learning to navigate, like adjusting to, like, for a lot of minorities, it's something that they're born into, and it's something like with the way that they appear, like a racial minority, especially, and so like, man, it does really bad shit to your brain. It's incredibly traumatic to live in a world that doesn't want you there, and like imagining dealing with that, growing up with that as like a little kid, sounds really awful. And like as a 30-year-old, adjusting to it is like so overwhelming and disheartening, and man, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot sometimes.
Yeah. I've realized recently, like if I were black, I would have fucking lost it by now. Like long ago, I would have absolutely fucking lost it. And I like, that's why I don't go to protests, because I will fucking lose it. I do not trust myself to like see police fucking someone up and not go and like kick someone in the face. Like I don't know that I wouldn't do that, which is why I stay home. I have, you know, my teenage siblings. I'm like prioritizing keeping myself safe so that I can provide them with a place to go when they're ready to graduate high school, and get them out of the state. You know, like my brother is 16, and hopefully we can keep him on his medicine while he lives there, but like he might not be able to stay on it, so might be a situation where like his access to healthcare is imminently needing to be addressed, not to mention our more long-term safety in this country. So
wish he could just move.
I know.
He could move in with you.
Oh, well, I mean, I have like a pretty small place where I live right now.
That makes sense.
But yes, I mean, that is the goal longer term, is like when I have more space, like basically my lease is going to be up in this apartment in like December. So I have to decide by August whether I'm renewing my lease or not. And I'm hoping that I'll be making enough money by then to be able to move into a bigger apartment or something. So yeah, it's a tough time. And like, that's not a situation. I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to have my teenage siblings living with me. Like, that kind of sounds like it's going to suck in some ways, but it's literally the only option. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't have a choice. It's not like the right choice. It's the only choice. And a lot of us are having to make that calculation. And yeah, I hope that we can pull together and as a community get these resources, establish these like hubs where we're getting people out. I know some folks in Pennsylvania are starting to try to like concentrate the number of queer people there. Minnesota, Seattle, Portland, California, like it's going to increase the polarization between blue and red states, but we need to get some of these queer kids to safety. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I think like any discussion on this subject, that's kind of where it always ends, is when people ask for solutions, like, what do you expect us to do? You know, you can vote if you want. You can send messages to your elected representatives if you want. I am not optimistic that that's going to make a difference. I can be hopeful that things will get better in this country, but I am not optimistic about that prospect. I think it's just going to get worse, and that we should really take that seriously and make our exit plans. Make more friends who are trans also. Like, stop holding people accountable for stupid shit that doesn't matter. Like, you know, I don't know.
Man, like, it is really frustrating to me because, like, right now is not a time to be, like, fighting over, like,
bi lesbians and like
shit like that. It's just, our lives are in danger right now, and it's like, we just shouldn't be fighting about that shit. That's just not what we need to be talking about. It's really frustrating, and I really hate how much division there is in the queer community. It's so dangerous. Like, okay, so I attended at my local LGBT org last weekend. So this was like a few days after the emergency rule was issued. And so it happened on Thursday, and it was on Sunday that I went to this event, and it was Coffee with Queers. So we're just all LGBT people and any local allies just come over and have some coffee and hang out. And you know, like, me and the trans people there are like still like actively terrified and like talking to each other about what's going on and like how to get resources and things. And like, the cis queer people just kind of come up and they're like, oh, what's going on? Like they don't know what's happening.
Oh God.
I'm like, geez, why? Why do you guys not, you know, it's just like that proximity to hegemony and privilege. It's what I've seen some people describe, like, cis gay people as doing is climbing up the escape ladder and pulling it up behind them.
Yeah, for sure.
And it is really sad and frustrating to me, especially like they either don't realize or they don't care that it's going to be them next. Like, they're going to come back for the gays, the cis gays, after they're done with the trans people, after they you know, extract everything out of us that they can. They've got to move on to the next minority.
It's not like they aren't already intimating at making gay marriage illegal. Like, when Ketanji Brown Jackson was being, when she was doing her whole hearings before being appointed as a justice thing, like, I remember, like, when they're asking her these questions about, like, do you consider these issues settled matters of law, blah, blah, blah. And like, one of the issues that came up, one of these Republican white men, was gay marriage. And I was like, excuse me? Like, I don't even know why I was listening to these confirmation hearings, but I was. And I was just like, excuse the fuck out of me? Like, we're really rolling back gay marriage now? And then, there are even, there's intimations that the rollback of Roe v. Wade could, because it's related to the 14th Amendment, could also impact like interracial marriage. It could go so far as that. So like, if anybody doesn't think that they want full on slavery of black people is like as their end goal, like, women subservient in the kitchen, baby factories only, men overwhelmingly laborers with no power, few white men owning land, only voters, everyone else subservient. Like, if people think that they don't want reject modernity, return to tradition, i.e. slavery and plantations, like, that's kind of where we're at, which just sounds like fucking insane. He's trying to say that to people. So we tried not to reveal our power level too much, but they certainly are starting to reveal what their intentions are, and hopefully it radicalizes more people. We can keep our fingers crossed anyway. But I have to pee so badly, and I think we've mostly talked about all the different aspects of this at this point. Is there anything else you want to shout out at the end? If you end up running a GoFundMe, I will link that, by the way. Like, if you are trying to escape and you need some help with that, I will shout out links to those things.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I do have like a list of resources that I would like to share, and so like it's actually in the link that I sent you, but I'll try to go over it pretty quickly. So starting tomorrow, Plume, which you might have heard of, it's like a mail pharmacy for HRT. They'll offer no cost appointments for people looking to obtain HRT before April 27th. So it's going to be between Monday and I guess Wednesday, 6-month prescriptions for testosterone and 12-month prescriptions for estrogen. So that's like no cost, free appointments for trans Missourians who are going to need some medication. So that's in the link. That's Plume, and we also have. Actually, they already got booked on the testosterone, so that sucks. Testosterone. So something I didn't mention in this is that testosterone is a controlled substance, so
Yeah.
that's something to keep in mind, that is going to be harder for us to like get access to, and like it's not going to be easy for trans feminine people. I don't want to like make it seem like a comparison thing, but for a lot of trans feminine people,
I mean, it's just less stigmatized and like legally safer for them to do.
yes,
Yeah. You know, so
estrogen and anti-androgens are like a gray market item, so that's a thing to keep in mind. Between now and April 27th, a small group of therapists in Missouri have open slots for like letters of support for gender affirming healthcare. So one-time appointments between 60 and 90 minutes long. If you need like a letter for getting into compliance with the laws or something, I think that's what this focuses on. So there's a link and like a contact information here. And there's a link to the map of informed consent HRT places in the country. No therapy required. Like you just go there and you're able to start HRT there. And they also recommend the Trans Resistance Network. So that's like a collective of experienced organizers and allies. So that's something I haven't checked out yet. So I'm going to look at that soon. And so like that link that I gave you, I think that should be like safe to share, as long as like you think that it's not going to get a whole bunch of conservative eyeballs or like transphobic eyeballs on it to like flood it. And
I don't really get that kind of attention on my channel, thankfully.
Okay, that's good.
I posted the link in chat, and I'll post it up in the Discord as well, if anybody wants to access it later in the Discord. Yeah, I'll probably tweet that as well, because we need as much info as we can for people. Even if you go the route where you're like, okay, I'm going to go to Illinois and get that done. Or like if you happen to have a transgender family member, if you happen to have a cisgender family member who could be prescribed low testosterone prescription, I'm not going to suggest anything about that, but
Yeah, that's something I've been talking to people too, is like there could be ways of acquiring things. Just think
it's
about
so
it
easy.
a little bit.
This is what I mean about gender affirming care being so much easier for cis people, is like you can just as a man be like, I can't get dick hard, please give me testosterone, and they just fucking will.
Yes. Yeah, so like if your grandpa's an ally, hit up your grandpa,
Oh God. Oh man. It's true though, but yeah.
I also wanted to say to your chat, like if there's if they had like any questions for me and I wasn't able to get to it because like I didn't want to look at chat because I knew I would be like
I get so distracted.
Yeah. So like you could definitely like go on my channel and you can put stuff there, or like I use the same username on Twitter and Reddit, and Reddit's probably like one of the better ways to reach out to me. So I can try to like direct people to resources or answer questions if they have some questions. So yeah.
And like I just posted the link in the chat there. You all should subscribe to Oliver, and so any updates that you post on your YouTube page, people will be able to see. If you end up needing to crowdfund or anything, folks can find that info. And Trans Cat Dad. It's trans_Cat Dad on Twitter, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So feel free to, you should go subscribe and follow on Twitter.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate that. It's been like really awesome talking to you, and not gonna lie, I was like a little bit starstruck because I've been watching you for like, I don't know, like probably 3 years or something.
I just pretend like that doesn't exist. And I think that makes it a lot easier for people to talk to me, because I just pretend like there is no potential for being starstruck. People are like, oh my God, I'm nervous. And I'm like, LOL, why? I'm a dipshit. Like, but yeah, no, you're awesome. Thank you for coming on and talking with us. Obviously, like, it's good to hear from people on the ground. I'm 1 degree separated from someone who's directly affected. It's not quite the same as being directly affected. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing those resources as well. I'm sure that's going to be like the more people get to knowing about those things, the better. This is frustrating.
Also, there's something I wanted to tell your chat, which is Audre Lorde said that caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. So, like, right now, if you're feeling like I can't take any care of anybody but myself right now, like I'm so overwhelmed, I'm distressed, I'm numb, I can't handle this, and I feel guilty because I can't do activism, I can't do outreach, and like, honestly, this is one of those, like, put the oxygen mask on yourself first situations, and like try not to feel guilty, because like I know, like I've spent many years of like basically just sitting in my house and like not being able to do the stuff that I want to do, and like I know how that feels. So like there's a whole lot of us, and all of us are going to do our best to like pick up the pieces and like unravel the giant tapestry of problems that our community is facing. So like if one day you feel able to do it and you can only do like a little bit, or maybe you can't do anything and all you can do is take care of yourself. Like I don't want like queer and trans people to feel guilty about not being able to do stuff like this, because it's really hard and it's really scary, it's really stressful, and yeah, I just don't want you guys to feel bad about it. I want you to take care of yourselves. That's what I want your audience to do.
If your existence is being stigmatized and made increasingly illegal, then your mere existence is an act of rebellion. And it's like a radical action in and of itself for trans people to, state that we're trans, to make those moves in our lives, to become, like, to embody transness. Like, it's radical. And even if you're closeted and you know that someday you're going to be able to come out, the knowledge that you are keeping yourself safe for the future of your most embodied self, like, that's still important. Rest is important, definitely. Like, yeah, I second that message for sure. Surviving is rebellion. Rule number 1, don't die. We stole it from Demon Mama. Rule number 1. So I for sure appreciate you coming on. Thank you for joining the website. Hope to see you around more in the future. And if there are any prescient updates on this, we could potentially do more chats later. I know that we talked previously about going more in depth about, or you messaged me at some point about like the whole abortion access as a trans man thing. So perhaps some other occasion we could like talk about that in more detail. Sure doesn't feel as relevant now, but like, for sure. So yeah, thank you again, Ollie, for coming on. I really appreciate you. And I hope that you have a good rest of your day.
Heck yeah, you too. It's good talking to you.
Yeah.